Single data type is a scalar on an array of 32-bit single precision floating point numbers. A single variable occupies half of the memory of a double variable. A single variable can be used just like a double variable in most MATLAB operations, but some MATLAB functions do not support the single data type. So by default, if you're going to use a floating point numbers, you should use double data type. There are many integer data types. Basically, there are two big categories. One is called a signed integer and the other is called an unsigned integer. The signed integer can have either negative or positive values, but the unsigned integers can only have positive values. And the integer can have different sizes. For example, you can have signed and unsigned 8-bit integer. For 8-bit binary, you can have 256 values. So if it is a signed 8 integer, which means int 8 integer, so the values will be from the negative 228 to the positive 127. If you use the 8-bit purely for a positive value, so it will start from 0 and to 255. Similarly, if we use 16-bit integer, if it is signed, so the range will start from negative 32,668 to the 32,667. And if it's an unsigned integer, it will start from 0 all the way to 65,536. And of course, if you use 32-bit integer, the range will be even bigger. And if you look at it, the range of the signed integer and the unsigned integer will essentially be the same. However, because half of the values will be in negative values, therefore the maximum value of signed integer will basically half of the maximum value of the unsigned integer. Integers can be created using the standard array creation functions such as zeros, ones, and all you have to do is to add a third input, that is the data type, to the function. For example, this function call will create 10 integers, and those integers are unsigned 8-bit integers, and the values of this vector will be 1. Another important things that you need to know is that MATLAB uses so-called saturating integer arithmetic. That is, if the result of an integer math operation exceeds the largest possible value of that integer can represent, then the result will be the largest possible value. For example, if you have two int8 integer, which means it's 8-bit signed integer, and if the result of that operation is 130, which exceeds the maximum value of the int data type, that is 127. So the final outcome will be 127 instead of 130. There are limitations of using single data type or integer data types. For example, MATLAB does not allow mathematical operations between two different types of integers or between integers and single values. So in that case, if we try to use a data type other than the double, there need to be a conversion from one data type to the other in order for the operation to complete. And unless you have special need to manipulate, such as images, sometimes because images, the data is stored in like integer data type, and otherwise you will probably never need to use those data types. This is particularly useful in MATLAB because the MATLAB is used for scientific calculations, and it's not used for like programs for like system software design, and therefore the data type is usually the double precision data type, and that should be sufficient. And the only benefit here to use a single data type instead of a double precision data type is that it saves space. However, since the memory is not that a precious commodity here, so that savings is not significant. Therefore, it is always good to use double data type to represent values. In summary, we learned the different data types in MATLAB. Especially, we learned string functions that work with strings. And also, we learned some special data type, for example, single precision data type. And also, we learned different types of integers.